All right, so yesterday I told you about a very controversial post that almost got a midwife fired that I wrote on my blog post. And today I'm going to continue that story. I mentioned that after I was told to pull this post and basically shut things down, make it go away because the health authority in question was getting pissed off, that this didn't stop me. First of all, the reason for that is because I had spent years already out there advocating. I'd heard stories of moms, including some of my friends that first started with me when I was working through Improving Birth and doing a rally location in our community. And we had really heard a lot of stories where moms would come up to us, they'd see this sign that said VBAC is an option. And it would just stop them in their tracks. And the reason it would stop them in their tracks was because they had been told that they couldn't have a VBAC. They were told that VBAC was too dangerous. They were told that it was unlikely that they would be able to have a VBAC. Sometimes it wasn't even discussed as an option at all. And people thought that once a cesarean, always a cesarean. Even in freaking 2019 and 2014 and 2015, this was a thing where people just thought that they had to do birth a certain way. And we would hear all this trauma, all these horrible stories, and I just got really fed up. So when I wrote that blog post, it was really a way for us to take our power back because I saw a way out for everyone. It was like, oh my gosh, if this midwife is able to open up this birth house, there's going to be more options. So obviously, I had to take that one down, and it's hidden, but I read it yesterday. You can go back and watch that video if you are curious, where it was quite, the blog post itself, there was nothing wrong with it, except for the overall intention of it, which was no more fighting, no more begging, no more compromising, no more letting the medical system call the shots, and instead be able to have your VBAC, even if you've had more than one cesarean, even if you're older, even if you have high blood pressure, even if you have gestational diabetes. And by doing that, you recognize that you actually have all the control. And this is also what the essence of your empowered birth really is. It's taking your power back. So I was not going to let this stop me. Just because this big medical corporation, they had all the power and they were able to gag the midwives and they were able to kick doulas out of the birth room. This is the problem, is that when your doula and your midwife really, really want to advocate for you, they can't. They can't advocate for you. That's the point of what I'm making with how I'm telling you about this blog post, is that this midwife went out with this intention to make it so that women could have more options in their birth. And she got burned. Big time. And there are doulas out there who have hospital privileges. And if they go into certain hospitals, the medical system is just like, oh, you're that one. No, we're not going to let you in. And they will actually abuse the clients further because of the fact that this doula is standing up. In fact, recently, one of the natural birth influencers that I follow, she'd even mentioned that she was in an environment where basically the nurses were like, the doula doesn't want us to give the client Pitocin. And it's like, no, the client is saying they do not want Pitocin, and I am amplifying their voice. But the fact is that your doula and your midwife can't advocate for you. You have to be able to do it yourself. And so when I recognized just how much of a mess this was and what kind of can of worms I had opened up with my little blog post, which was so inflammatory and I had no idea. I'm a Scorpio. I like to stir things up. I don't do the status quo. So there was a little part of me that was like, ooh, I have power here. I like this. I can see it's agitating them. And if it's agitating them, then that means there's a chance. There is a real chance here. So I wrote this other post in place of it. because I wasn't just going to pull something and go off into my little corner and hide and just lay low. No. They poked the bear. And they poked me. They ticked me off the first time with my son's birth. They almost tried to get me again with my second. And they had been doing this to my friends. They'd been doing this to the women in my community. I was just done. After 4 years of being a birth advocate and recognizing that birth didn't have to be this way, I was just done. And this is basically in 2019, I recognized the power that I could really have. And this is the first thoughts of what I wanted to do and when I decided to create my business the first time. That then burned down. All right. And then all this other stuff happened in 2019. I cover a little bit about that in the introduction to the book. But if you ever want to know my story, I do share it quite a lot on my personal page as well. It's you can find me on my Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. I have YouTube channels. You can always just reach out to me and say, hey, Carly, where do I find the rest of your stuff? And I'll tell you. I'll tell you anything. I have no secrets. I have nothing to hide. But so here's the thing is I wrote this blog post, and it's called Birth Advocacy is for All of Us. Why we need more birth advocates who aren't birth professionals. This is where I really got the idea for empowering moms, because this way you get your power back and you can advocate for yourself. You can't have your doula do it. You can't rely on the medical system to change. You have to come to birth as a consumer. And this is really where it started. So I wrote this blog post, as I said, back in August of 2019. And it's still true today as it was true back when I wrote it. And I even saw the shift even more after 2020. Our maternity care is in crisis. Everyone who has ever tried to exercise true informed choice in our system knows this is the case. Families who deviate from the standards of care, such as those choosing home birth, VBAC, breech vaginal birth, twin vaginal birth, or who just want to refuse certain tests, are often stigmatized or treated poorly in this system. We are vilified as caring more about our experience than the safety of our children. For already marginalized family groups, this can even lead to involvement with the Ministry of Children and Families, also known as CPS, Child Protective Services, depending on where you live. Whether that involvement is actually necessary is highly debatable and steeped in biases and often systemic racism. So those who are of color, or they happen to be indigenous backgrounds, they happen to have a different socioeconomic status, they're marginalized groups, they actually get more pushback from the medical system than those who are in a place of privilege, and we need to recognize and acknowledge that. So I also put the headline. So because our hands aren't tied by the system is reason number one why birth advocacy needs to take all of us, and it can't just be the birth workers. Now, I myself am a virtual doula. I don't go into the hospitals. I do that by choice because they can't touch me if I'm not in the system. I am not tied to the system at all. That's why it's so powerful. So if you are friends with a doula or midwife and they trust you enough to let you into their world, then you are likely aware of the hidden trauma in these professions. This trauma often stems not from the individual health of the mother-baby pairing, or even what the outcome was for the birth, but in the way the laboring person was treated. Moms are being lied to while they are in labor, and doulas, midwives, and even the few obstetricians are witnessing the coercion in the hospitals and even at home. But they can't really talk about it to their clients or warn them away from choosing the certain hospital for their birth. Their hands are tied. They can't say it. I can't name names, but I can do a little bit more than a lot of doulas who happen to want to be able to support clients in person in the hospital. And I can do a hell of a lot more for the midwives who have told me their stories, who can't actually say these things. So birth professionals have strict regulations on what they're allowed to do in terms of how they practice and what options they present to their clients. They may even be reprimanded for the choices their client makes. And in the worst case scenarios, the client can even be punished for making a decision while the midwife or doula watches and is powerless to stop it. This actually happens. It happened to Jenny. It happened to me. It happened to so many other women that I've worked with. I've heard the stories of midwives who have told me what is going on, and it goes deep. Okay, this goes deep. So, put simply, their hands are tied. They're expected to play nice and toe the line, and those who don't are called out and vilified. Welcome to the witch hunt of the 21st century. Reason number 2, because we are the ones suffering under the system. So I've watched on the outside of this system for 6 years at that point. I hear stories from the mothers during the birthday parties, play groups, and many other social gatherings when I mention what it is that I do. They tell me these stories because I am the one of the few who doesn't tell them a healthy baby is all that matters. And I mean, this is still true today. I still run into people. So I've had women approach me during various rallies over the years drawn by our colorful VBAC is an option and question your induction signs, which got burned in the fire. Most lead their request with, "Are you midwives?" I tell them that I am neither a midwife nor a doula, but that I can connect them with women in those professions. I also tell them that I have done extensive research, verified by these birth professionals, on a variety of birth-related topics. They tell me, "I've gone to so many OBs and nobody will let me have a VBAC after 2 cesareans, 3 cesareans, etc. Sometimes they're even told a VBAC is more dangerous than a repeat cesarean, and not even given the option of a vaginal birth, and I help them. I have women who message my page, even contact me directly, and I help them. I have women who are on parenting forums who reach out for help from the larger internet community, only to be told to just do what they're told by their doctor to do, and I help them. I get torn into for helping these strangers, but I do it anyway. Why? Because it's necessary to get the word out to as many people as possible. We cannot change this broken system from the inside. I mean, midwives and doulas and nurses have been trying for years. There's a few obstetricians out there. Dr. Stu is probably one of them. He really supports twin birth and breech birth and all that. But you just can't. You just can't. You can't turn a system that's so big and so powerful from the inside because there's so much at risk. But you can do it from the outside because it's a business, and guess what? When you don't support that business, it falls, right? So this is how we're going to do it. So it's necessary to get the word out to as many people as possible. We cannot change this broken system on the inside. We cannot only have doulas and midwives and OBs in this fight to fix the system and remove paternalism in maternity care. Seriously, this is something I've been working on for 10 years now. Your Empowered Birth is just like the culmination of that. And it's just the next step in what we're really building here. So another reason, because we need to ruffle the feathers now. So nothing has been made more clear to me that we need non-birth professionals in this fight than what I have heard when speaking to these birth professionals. Your doulas are tired, and not just because they stayed up with you for 48 hours. They're tired because they see the abuse and coercion in the system, and they are powerless to actually stop it. I mean, you see this with the influencers. They are telling you as much as they possibly can. There are doulas out there. They are saying these things, but it is falling on deaf ears because of this reason. So they're there to support you in your decisions, but they can't actually fight for you. They can't stand up too often or shout too loud because they risk getting thrown out of the room. Midwives, OBs, and nurses can't speak too loudly against the system either because they risk losing their hospital privileges or even their license. You might have noticed a certain popular post was pulled. I wish to state that the midwife I spoke with and wrote the post about did not write that post. I did. She gave me permission to post it. There wasn't anything inherently negative about it, and it promoted her services, so why not? There's nothing negative about women being made aware of their options and understanding that certain policies in the system could affect their birth outcomes. Nonetheless, I have had to pull it because it got attention of certain powers that be, who would rather I hadn't said anything at all. I mean, isn't that pretty much how revolutions start in the first place? So this is why when people ask me if I want to be a doula or midwife, I tell them I couldn't do it. It's not that I'm not smart enough or that I wouldn't be great at it, but I'm needed here. So this is again why I don't attend births in person. I do virtual, and I don't attend all births. I often just coach clients, and then they have their own doulas and their own midwives and their own birth team. But I really specialize on helping you get the birth you want. I also don't work with everyone. I'm very selective. And I mean, you've got my book now, so I don't really need to work with you directly. You can go through the whole system and you can get the birth you want. So most of the blogs out there on birth are written by birth professionals. They have to be careful how they ruffle feathers because it can negatively impact their careers. I don't have to be careful. I can ruffle all the feathers I like, which is again why I love my freedom and I love my business, because there's absolutely nothing that can basically derail this. I got certified as a doula by someone who loves to ruffle feathers, and she even told us that if we don't get in trouble at least once per year, we forfeit our certificate. Like, that was the preference. She said we need to ruffle feathers. There's other birth workers out there that would love to have their clients and their proteges out there ruffling feathers as well. But there's not enough of us. There's not enough of us being able to ruffle the feathers. There's still a lot of doulas and midwives out there that do toe the line because they're scared. There's a lot of moms out there that toe the line because they're scared. So we need to really stand up. This is again why Your Empowered Birth is so wonderful, because you're able to do this in a way that doesn't ruffle the feathers of the medical system in a negative aspect, but it does push them to think. So I don't sensationalize, lie, or misrepresent information. I don't have to. The stories I hear, the women I speak with, the stats I read, the information I gather, they are all factual. If the hospitals and OBs out here are getting a fewer consumers willing to put their births in the system, then that's on them, not me, not the doulas, OBs, and midwives who have been fighting for change for decades now. If women are wising up and telling them that they won't be talked into a cesarean they don't want, then that's because today's generations are sick of being told what to do with our bodies. So yes, for now, I have pulled a post that was positively geared to families who didn't want to be in the hospital. I pulled a post geared to families who may have been traumatized by the hospital as I was. Families who refused to set foot through those hospital doors anyway. These are not their customers. They are running away from the system anyway. The rise of unassisted birth and home births isn't a coincidence. Yes, some women do just prefer to birth unassisted, but that's a very small percentage compared to the women like myself who felt pushed into that decision either to protect themselves, their midwives, or both. I mean, the reason I ended up doing unassisted was because I didn't want my midwife to have to come back and she would have to do her checklist, and I knew this. Like, she even said, if you go back into labor and you call me, I'm going to have to assess your progress because we had called the hospital last night. And if you can hear, my son is learning his own way of doing the piano in the background. So that's what that cacophony is. Okay, so where is it? I have said this so many times, I would rather birth under a tree in my own backyard than put myself at the mercy of our system again. That's true back then as it is now. Let me make this plain. We should not have to birth alone just because the system took away every alternative option for us to birth as we wish. So, another reason why you need to recognize that birth advocacy and standing up for ourselves and taking our power back in our births, and why you want to follow what I'm teaching inside Your Empowered Birth, is because we have nothing to lose and everything to gain by doing this. Okay? So the blog post I wrote was intended to let families who don't want to birth in the system know that there are safe alternatives to unassisted birth where all their decisions would be respected. But apparently, that's unacceptable to our oh so lovely health authority. On the brighter side of things, though, this little incident has confirmed what I already suspected. It will be the consumers who drive change in our maternity care, and their strength in our numbers. They can try to silence our birth professionals who advocate for us, but if we all stand up and speak our truths, then eventually they will have no choice but to listen. So this goes back to my whole thing of change or GTFO. And I have had this thought since I first became a birth advocate. I recognized that birth was a business. I had watched The Business of Being Born. I understand how marketing works. I understand how businesses work. I was in retail. I had a background in that. I have a background in psychology and socioeconomics and social dynamics. And I really understood history and how things can change. I mean, women who behaved, they don't make history. So I plan to be the most not behaving woman. I am a very, very difficult, bad behaving woman, and I love it. And if you are the same way, if you are sick and tired of this mess and you want to change it, it starts first with you taking back control of your birth. If you have not had a baby yet, or if you have had one but you want different experience, and if you have already had your children and you're not going to have any more, but you're like, you know what, this is right, like I should not have had to have my birth robbed from me. I did not deserve that. I deserve to have better. Women deserve to have better. We all deserve to have better. My children, their children, they all deserve to have better. This is how we do it. So, I mean, I have women that are in their 80s. They're obviously not going to have any more children, but they also support empowered birth because they recognize what it can really do for us. And I'm doing this for my daughter. I'm doing this for my future grandchildren. And I want to make sure that when they go in and have their birth, they can have it any way they want. And they don't have to fight. They don't have to beg. They don't have to compromise. And birth trauma is a thing of the past. So then I ended it like this. Who am I really? I'm a mom that got fed up with the paternalism in maternity care. I'm a former consumer of the maternity care system who has rejected that paternalism and done my own thing in birth. I'm a woman who, when I put my mind up to something, there's no shutting me up. And I mean, I said that back in 2019, and now I made good on my promise. So, you know, like I mean it. I am not going to stop. So I follow the birth activists, midwives, doulas, nurses, and OBs, and I echo what they're saying. So I also amplify voices. So if you yourself are a birth worker and you would like me to talk more about stuff that you do, I'm happy to amplify your voice. You amplify my voice, I amplify your voice. It's going to take all of us. We're all in this together. I'm not in competition with any of you, and I just want this message out. So we're all going to have to work together on this. A drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves, and enough waves change the tide. But if we're dropping in the ocean in different spots, we're not creating those ripples big enough to create a wave. So we all need to gather together. And this is the same thing if you're just a mom who is pissed off and you want to have your birth to be a better experience. We need to focus our collective efforts to really get this moving. Because if we keep scattering out there and we just all stay segmented, that is how the system wins. That is how basically oppression happened for women in the first place, is that we were all isolated and we weren't even able to gather because of witchcraft. And well, guess what? The worst thing that could have happened was having the internet. Why do you think in Handmaid's Tale they got rid of the internet for women and they tried to make it so they couldn't read? But the damage has already been done. Women are already educated. We already know what we can have. So we're not putting up with this crap anymore. We're not going back. We won't go back. I know there's a lot of stuff that's happened in the States that has kind of had us backslide. I'm in Canada, so I don't have that, but my heart goes out to those in the US, and I recognize what's going on. And I saw this in the pandemic as well. I knew that this was going to happen when everything shut down, that doulas and partners were not going to be allowed in, and it's like there's going to be a lot of trauma. And at the same time, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be looking up how to have an unassisted birth because they don't want to go back into that system. So I follow the birth activists, the midwives, doulas, and OBs, and I echo what they're saying. I let the consumers of maternity care know their options and help them navigate the system for their comfort, not for the convenience of the system. I don't work for the system. I will eventually teach classes on how to birth in that system or outside of it, not classes meant to churn out compliant little patients who believe a healthy baby is all that matters. Wow, I totally predicted that because that's exactly what I did. I will do podcasts that speak out the truths of the consumers and the anonymous birth professionals who wish to talk with me, which I've also done. The only thing stopping me right now is money and lack of technical know-how, but I'll get there. The article may have been pulled, but my voice just got louder. And it totally did. So that's the thing, is that when you have an empowered birth, nobody can take your power back away from you ever again. You start to see where you were doubting yourself before, and you're like, I got everything I need now. I've got this. I am powerful. I am capable of doing this. And so that's really what I wanted to tell you. And again, if you want to know more, if you want to really get that roadmap, Your Empowered Birth has the roadmap for you. You don't have to fight. You don't have to beg. You don't have to compromise. All right. Thank you again so much for watching. I really love sharing these old blog posts and being able to give that little piece to you because they're not available. Some of them you might be able to find, but that's going to quickly change as I change things on my website, as I tweak things. But I really wanted you to understand this is what Empowered Birth is really about. We can't just rely on other people to protect us. We have to protect ourselves. And in order to protect yourself, you really need to get past your fear. You need to understand how the system is really operating. You need to understand the cultural implications, the societal implications of what's really going on, pulling back that curtain. And that is what Your Empowered Birth really does. It's not like a typical birth book where you're learning about dilation and labor stages and all that. I mean, if you want to know that stuff, just go to my YouTube channel. Links in the bio for that too. I talk all about how natural birth actually works. But that's not the book I wanted to write. I wanted to write the actual roadmap because you can consume birth for 9 months like I did. You can go and follow all of the natural birth influencers. In fact, I follow quite a few of them. And they do have really good information. And I highly, highly encourage you to go and check that out. But at the same time, information isn't all you need. You also need to be able to recognize what's really going on so that you can come to birth from a place of power instead of fear. And when the medical system tries to mess with you, you know exactly what you need to do to basically hurt them in their wallet and make them start thinking. This is all about helping your care provider learn how to think because they are also indoctrinated into the system and they have their own fears. There's their own priorities that they have. So it's not even just about what words to say to your care provider. It's about understanding the basic foundations of that so that you can really get something moving. It's not enough for us to just go and have an empowered birth and a natural birth and be like, oh, I got mine. It's all good. No, this is also going to shift the balance of power so that more women can get that as well. So that every family can come into their birth and they don't have to fight. They don't have to beg. They don't have to compromise. They don't make those mistakes. They don't get the wrong information and things change. Right now, we've got so many natural birth traps out here. It is just, it's so much that I can't even list them. I had a 20 traps guide. It's available on my website. You can just go check the links in the bio. But even then, it's not just 20 traps. I have so many more that I see every time I go into the mom groups, and they all come down to that one thing of trusting the experts, of thinking that your doula and your midwife will be able to tell you everything. And the fact is that they sometimes can't. The other thing with limitations with doulas is if they're only coming in for a certain number of sessions, they may not be able to prepare you for absolutely everything that you need to know about what that hospital is going to do. If the doula that you've hired hasn't seen the BS that has come through the hospital that you're choosing to work at, choosing to birth at, and they haven't been at that hospital enough, they are not going to be able to steer you away from that. Doulas also do not interfere with your choices. So if you're making a choice that we kind of wince and we're knowing that it's not a good idea, but you have convinced yourself that this is needed because you're still in fear, because your care provider has been indoctrinating you way before we got to you. Because oftentimes you hire your doula after you've already hired your care provider. And then when you hire your care provider, you don't actually see the red flags and they continue to push you down this path. Maternity care is also about indoctrinating you into becoming a compliant patient. You recognize that right from the beginning when you're given a whole battery of tests to make sure that you're growing a healthy baby. Well, first of all, your body's going to do that anyway. It doesn't actually need you to do that battery of tests. But the medical system, again, is basically indoctrinating you so that the more that you continue to follow that path, the more likely it is that when birth comes and it's like labor time, you're going to just follow their checklist because, again, they're operating for profit, convenience, and liability. Now, I'm not going to say that every single birth worker in the system is a bad apple. They're obviously not. However, unfortunately, the people that are mostly in a position of power and authority and are making all the money off of medicalized birth really have a vested interest in keeping it that way. And when you don't see that, when you don't recognize that that's what's going on, that there's no money in natural birth, this is what part of the problem is. In order to topple that, we've got to play the game smarter. So again, Your Empowered Birth tells you how to do that. You can go check out my YouTube channels. Keep following this as well. If you are finding value in this, please comment, please like, please share. If you find little bits and pieces as a birth worker that you think this part was really good and I want to talk more on that, I'm giving you full permission to do that. You can absolutely take parts of the videos that I share and put them through your own channel. Tag me though, okay? So then I can tag you back and then we can keep this going. As I said, putting all those drops in the ocean in like different places and not all collecting them together is not going to make enough ripples. It's just going to keep everybody segmented. It's going to make it so that all the moms that they maybe follow you, but they don't know everything else that they're missing. And then it just continues over and over and over again. I want them to be able to find you. So if you're following me and I'm not following you yet and I don't know about you, comment below and let's talk. Let's get this moving. And mamas who have already had empowered births or want to have empowered births and you really want to support this, again, same thing. I also share stories of moms who may not be birth workers but may also want to have their voices amplified. I'm here to amplify your voice. I really want this to be the year of empowered birth. I started out with just creating the empowered birth workshop that I had back in the springtime, which was how to write your birth plan. That is now also a bonus that you get with my book. And now I've got the book out on Amazon. It's available. It's actually a very low price if you go and get it on Kindle. Links in the bio. I have the YouTube channel. Now let's really get this going. Okay? Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. I'll see you soon. Bye.